Chapter 17. Piper. Piper couldn't believe how hard it was to find deadly poison. All morning she and Frank had scoured the Pt52. Frank allowed only Piper to come with him, thinking that her charm speak might be useful if they ran into his shape-shifting relatives. As it turned out, her sword was more in demand. So far, they'd slain a Lastigonian ogre in the bakery, battled a giant warthog in the public square, and defeated a flock of Stymphian birds with some well-aimed vegetables from Piper's cornucopia. She was glad for the work. It kept her from dwelling on her conversation with her mother right the night before. That bleak glimpse of the future Aphrodite had made her promise not to share. Meanwhile, Piper's biggest challenge in Pylos was the ads plastered all over town for her dad's new movie. The posters were in Greek, but Piper knew what they said. Tristan McLean is Jake Steele, signed in blood. Gods, what a horrible title. She wished her father had never taken on the Jake Steele franchise, but it had become one of his most popular roles. There he was on the poster, his shirt ripped open to show his perfect abs. Gross, Dad. An AK-47 in each hand, and a rakish smile on his chiseled face. Halfway across the world, in the smallest, most out-of-the-way town imaginable, there was her dad. It made Piper feel sad, disoriented, homesick, and annoyed all at once. Life went on. So did Hollywood. While her dad pretended to save the world, Piper and her friends actually had to. In 8 more days, unless Piper could pull off the plan that Aphrodite had explained, well, there wouldn't be any more movies or theaters or people. Around 1 in the afternoon, Piper finally put her charm speak to work. She spoke with an ancient Greek ghost in a laundromat. On a 1 to 10 scale for weird conversations, definitely an 11. And got directions to an ancient stronghold where the shape-shifting descendants of Perselinus supposedly hung out. After trudging across the island in the afternoon heat, they found a cave perched halfway up a beachside cliff. Frank insisted that Piper wait for him at the bottom while he checked it out. Piper was not happy about that, but she stood obediently on the beach, squinting up at the cave entrance and hoping that she hadn't guided Frank into a death trap. Behind her, a stretch of white sand hugged the foot of the hills. Sunbathers sprawled on blankets. Little kids splashed in the waves. The blue sea glittered invitingly. Piper wished she could surf those waters. She'd promised to teach Hazel and Annabeth Sunday if they ever came out to Malibu, if Malibu still existed after August 1st. She glanced up at the cliff's summit. The ruins of an old castle hung to the ridge. Piper wasn't sure if that was part of the shapeshifters' hideout or not. Nothing moved on the parapets. The entrance of the cave sat about 70 feet down the cliff face, a circle of black in the chalky yellow rock, like a hole in a giant pencil sharpener. Nestor's Cave, the laundromat ghost had called it. Supposedly the ancient king of Pylos had stashed his treasure there in times of crisis. The ghost also claimed that Hermes had once hidden the stolen cattle of Apollo in that cave. Cows. Piper shuddered. When she was little, her dad had driven her past a meat processing plant in Chino. The smell had been enough to turn her to a vegetarian. Ever since, just the thought of cows made her ill. Her experiences with Hera, the cow queen, and catapults in Venice, and the pictures of creepy death cows in the house of Hades had not helped. Piper was just starting to think that Frank's been gone too long when he appeared at the cave entrance. Next to him stood a tall, gray-haired man in a white linen suit and a pale yellow tie. The older man pressed a tiny, small object, like a stone or a piece of glass, into Frank's hands. He and Frank exchanged a few words. Frank nodded gravely. Then the man turned into a seagull and flew away. Frank picked his way down the trail until he reached Piper. "I found them," he said. "I noticed. You okay?" He stared at the seagull as it flew towards the horizon. Frank's close-cropped hair pointed forward like an arrow, making his gaze even more intense. His Roman badges, mural crown, centurion, praetor, glittered on his shirt collar. On his forearm, the SPQR tattoo with the crossed spears of Mars stood out darkly in the full sunlight.